9. Welcome, everyone. My name is Enrique. I am with Tamin, and I appreciate you attending the Macadmins talk for Awkward No More Text Processing Tricks for Macadmins. I've been in the Macadmin space for about 8 years. 2 years at my current company. Actually, not today, this month is 2 years at Tamin. I started off as a junior systems admin, network admin as well. A little bit about me, about my background. I'm a lifelong learner. I love technology. I love reading about technology, especially about all the new developments we have today, AI, neural language processing. I find it all fascinating. I love classical music. Favorite composer is Bach. And if anyone is here is a musician, you know how difficult it is to pick up an instrument. And I picked up the violin as an adult, thinking it's like, oh, I can play this thing. It's easy. Not at all. So my respect if you're a musician, if you've been playing for a long time. All right, so when I got exposed to awk, I saw something like this. So we're going to follow the big giant cursor here. I saw this, like, what in the world is this? What's going on, right? And so as a little preview of what's going on, awk is invoking a function. This right here is substituting a underscore with an empty space. And then it's substituting a dash for a pipe symbol. And it's taking in a standard input file, some awk file. So don't worry about learning this specifically right now. By the end of the talk, I hope that you'll be able to look at that and you'll be able to recognize what it's doing. So about the history of awk. Just want to get a show of hands. How many of you are not familiar with awk at all? You just saw this and you're like, oh, I want to come and learn more about it. Okay, great. How many of you guys are exposed to it and would like to learn a little bit more details about awk? Probably have some more expertise? Excellent. Who's like an expert in awk? Wise decision, because you guys would have been my TA. No, I'm kidding. All right, so.
I'm really good with awkward.
All right. So awk has been around for a long time. It was created in 1977 at Bell Labs. So the three creators, the last names, their first initial or their last names, they combined it, and they named the programming language after that. So it's Alfred Aho, Peter Weinberger, and Brian Kernighan. These guys in the field of computer science have contributed a ton. Brian Kernighan is actually still active, developing things for awk, like improving the code base. And he does it for free. That's admirable, right? So awk was also influenced by earlier tools, such as grep and sed, if you guys have heard of that. Actually, there's a talk about that tomorrow. I encourage you to attend it as well. But awk has a more robust feature set. It's a programming language, right? It provides programming constructs such as variables, arrays, functions, conditional logic, making it a versatile and suitable tool for text processing and data extraction. So why has awk stuck around? Awk is performant. And for any of you data science or computer science peeps out there, it doesn't increase the space complexity of memory. So it doesn't load the entire file into memory all at once. It reads, okay? So I want you to really understand that awk reads line by line, standard input, standard output, okay? And we'll get a little bit more about it if you're a little confused. So the evolution, it's backwards compatible. So you have awk that was created back in the early 80s that can still be ran today with awk today. It's simple and efficient. It's easy to learn, as you will see. In fact, with typical awk, you will see one or two awk statements that does a lot. And that's pretty much what you really need. You need to get the gist, and this is what the talk is for. Community support. Awk has phenomenal community support. It's been around the block many times, and lots of documentation if you have any curiosity about learning or expanding your knowledge. So awk is meant for quick text processing and manipulation, but it can do much more. If you want to write programs in awk, you can definitely do that because that is a programming language. It is Turing complete. as it was designed by the authors of the language. Contextually, you can also think of awk as a filtering program. So originally it was intended for writing short programs for text processing. And we're going to see those programs, some use cases that we'll go over. It's flexible enough to write more complex programs. As I mentioned, there is a video online on YouTube where you can look at as well, not specifically geared for Macadmins like this talk, but there is a gentleman that wrote he built a server on awk, I believe is what he did. So I mean, the limit is your imagination. So awk excels in output formatting, scripting, general scripting, and data transformation. You can do quick analysis and processing tasks very easily with awk. Simple by design, viable, useful. Okay? So the basics. Commenting, right? Commenting is very important because that first line that I saw in the first slide the second slide that I showed you, if there wasn't a comment, I'm like, well, what is this? If I'm new to a language, and particularly some of us here are new to awk, right? So as you can see here, this octothorpe symbol here, or some people like to call it the pound symbol, not a hashtag, that's heresy. It is, so here what we have is a system profile. I'm not going to go much too deep into it, but just know that what it's doing is that I'm leaving a comment here, as highlighted here in blue, and it's printing all instances of the word macOS. It's finding all those instances in a file. In this case, it's looking at it from the standard output. The awk paradigm. If you're somewhat familiar with awk, this will be, a refresher. But in general, the awk paradigm is this. And I'm going to repeat this quite a few times in the talk. Single quotes, a pattern, and in between or after the pattern, an action. You will always have in the action, you will always know that it's an action because there's curly braces, and the pattern will be in between two forward slashes. As you see, you can have patterns that don't have two forward slashes, by the way, just as FYI. So you can have a condition 1, and then the action. Awk will do the processing for that one pattern and match the action. Continue on with condition 2, action 2, on and on. Patterns sans actions, or patterns without actions. Awk is implicit. So if I do that same command, if I look up macOS, it will give me all instances where macOS is explained. I'm sorry, not explained, but it's outputted. Begin and end patterns. So begin matches before the first line of the first input file is read. Let me repeat that again. Begin, this pattern, this special pattern in awk, matches before the first line of the first input file is read. And you can think of the begin pattern as a heading. You're going to have a heading. You're going to say, in this case, I'm printing out hello world. And then the footnote, the end, you can think of it as the reverse of the begin pattern. And it says hello to you as well. And awk needs to have either standard input, standard output. Since there is, if I didn't have this devnol, this is a little side note. If I didn't have this devnol file, it would not print. It would not print the end statement. It would just print the begin because it's waiting for input. So how are we doing? I've covered a couple of topics or some tidbits here. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast? So far, so good, guys. Okay, great. So as a coworker of mine says that silence in our team sometimes signifies a roaring applause, so I'll take that as a roaring applause. Tip to you, Brian. All right. Reserved variables. These that I have highlighted here, like in that red box, are the ones that I typically use the most There is a lot of other reserved variables. This is taking from the awk programming language book. I encourage you guys to actually look at that. There's a lot of great stuff in it. But these are the ones that I use the most. As a Macadmin, my assumption is that you probably will as well, so take note of that. And then built-in string functions. You saw that a little earlier, the second slide. Here, where big giant cursor's at. Right there, right? Oh, there it is. So that is global substituting R, so it's looking for R and it's substituting with S, okay? Or, I mean, you have the description here, but there's many other ones, right? There's indexing to find out the length of the string, to match, pattern matching, plenty of stuff. awk has two data types, strings of characters, numbers. So there's quite a bit going on in the first line of code here. So I'm initiating a begin statement, and I'm assigning a variable. I'm creating a variable and assigning it the string of characters hello world. And then I'm asking it to print using the inbuilt function sub str, and I'm placing the variable here that I want to manipulate, and I'm asking it to print 1 through 5. Now, I purposely put that in there because if you're familiar with programming languages, you have a concept that programming language, some of them, not awk, you start at n minus 0. So the index in an array starts at n minus 0. So the first element in an array would be 0, right? That's the first element, and it goes through, in this case, if we were looking at Python or C, it would be 0 through 4. The output is hello. So awk uses a 1-based indexing. The first element in an array in awk, or in this case of a string of characters, is the letter H. So just as a little tidbit so you guys can know that. The more you know, right? So numbers. Same thing, I'm creating a new variable x, assigning the number 8, and I'm adding x plus y. The output would be 10.5. So still a tidbit of what manipulations you can do with awk. Important concept. In awk, the way that it looks at data and the way that it processes it is through fields. You can think of fields as columns. So double equals right here if you're a programming person. Fields equals columns. The $0 prints the entire current record, usually a line of text. Okay? Now, this is where we get into the fields and columns. If you put print, and we're going to go over this, if you put print $1, it will print the first column. If you do print $2, the second, all the way until n. So print columns and actions, and as I mentioned before, print or print 0 does the same thing. So here we are echoing macOS Sonoma. And I'm asking awk to print the first field. I'm sorry, not to print the first field. I'm asking awk to print the entire field, and I'm doing this with print $0. It knows it's going to print the entire record. In this case, it'll print macOS Sonoma. The same thing with just leaving out the $0 print. It prints macOS Sonoma. It's the same thing as using grep macOS Sonoma, or echo, in this case without the awk, without piping in awk, macOS Sonoma. Now obviously there are some use cases in tomorrow's talk you will see some examples of this. If I'm trying to grep something, I'm not going to use an awk, right? Or try to do something similar to this. I'm going to use grep, right? So awk syntax in action, as I mentioned before, if we have the first field that I want to print $1, Mac OS. Okay, so this is the first field. The second, print $2, Sonoma. So that you're not left out clueless, I'm asking awk here, remember, pattern, action. I'm asking awk to look for a pattern of macOS. This is a simple one. We're going to get a little bit more complex, but you'll see how this all unfolds. And when I find the instance of macOS, I'm asking awk with the action to print the first column. In this case, macOS. I'm asking awk here, in this case, to search for terms where macOS is found, and I'm asking it to print the second column, hence Sonoma is the second column, hence Sonoma is what's outputted.
Clarifying question on that.
Yes.
If your string was, I need you have the catch box? Testing, testing. Well, okay. Clarifying question, if your string wasn't macOS Sonoma, it was the macOS Sonoma, and you still did that same search term at %1, would the output still be macOS? So does that %1 start at where it finds it, or is it part of the whole string? Does that make sense?
The %1.
Or $1, sorry.
Yeah, $. So it's going to look for, this is going to look for the exact match.
Okay.
Okay? Actually, if I do two quotes here, it'll look for the exact match, and it's case sensitive at that point. Okay, this actually will look for any instance of macOS. I would need to see it about that. I believe it will print out. It will search for the macOS Sonoma. If you just put the macOS Sonoma, it will look for that.
So
we'll need to verify that.
to ask it a different way, your index, that $1, that starts at the match?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. Does that make sense, guys? Correct. Correct. All right. We'll have some more questions and answers. So to reiterate, the basic syntax to memorize, right? This is it. Single quotes, and in between these single quotes, you have a pattern you want to match, curly braces, and action, right? Pattern, action, text to search for, command. So go ahead and take a moment.
Go back a slide.
Yes.
Thank you. Make this deck available?
Yeah, it'll be available. Yeah. I'll make it available, guys. So take a moment. Open Terminal in your computer if you have a computer. And I want you to type this exactly as you see it here. And then in between these two // type in the word inet. And you'll get to see what awk does in action.
In between the two slashes?
Mm-hmm. Should see something similar to this. I did inet 6, which is IPv6. A tidbit here that you can also add other Unix commands to awk. In this case, I'm piping in the head. And I'm typing it again, and then I find the loopback address for inet 6. And if I want to be more explicit, I can search for it as a pattern to match. And there we go. It returns that line. Go over it again. Whoops. Nope, not complying. There goes my talk. All right. Okay, let's do this again. And we're going to do this with the manual page of TCP dump. Pipe in awk, and search for every, in those two // put in network. And for those of you guys who are experienced, if you want to play around, get bonus points, I don't have anything to give, but you can print and number each line. If you don't do it, don't worry about it. So this is what it is in action. So you can see here, you pipe in awk. This is the expression we're looking for network. And then this is how you print the line, as you can see here. Each occurrence is printing, so you print it in the fourth line. This is where you can find the word network. This is where you can find the word network again on the 24th line. So it may be useful for some use cases, right?
So NR is like number of records?
That's correct. Yeah.
It's like, I have to get, when I'm dealing with chunks of text, get into the gauge of fields, is it words, is it strings?
Yeah.
Fields and records and all.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, how are we doing? Do you guys like those exercises? Does it kind of clarify a little bit about awk? You can pattern match pretty much anything. And of course, if it returns with nothing, that means it didn't match the pattern you're searching for. Sample text file. So we have a file device_list.txt. Again, we're searching for the pattern for iOS. Okay, so awk, we're asking it to search for the pattern that matches iOS and to print the second field that it finds. And the standard input file, remember standard output, standard input. The standard input file is device_list.txt. Returns back with the number 14. If I were to do this with iPadOS and ask for the third field, it will print 17.5 and so on. So other kinds of manipulation you can do with the data with the fields. You can divide it, you can multiply it, right? And it would print out the actions that you intend to produce. So with awk, you can compute sums, averages. You can do control statements. We're not going to go into that. It's another topic in and of itself. In fact, you probably won't even use control statements like if, while loops. I mean, maybe, but I'm not going to talk about it here. Just know that any control statement will be inside of the curly braces because it's an action you want to do to text. Okay? It can also do arrays and much more. So, this is not a knock on Martin Fowler. He's a really famous computer scientist. And this is actually very true. Any fool can write computer code, code that a computer can understand, but good programmers write code that humans can understand. Martin Fowler, very true. Okay, that's why we have comments. And then, you know, programmers who write regex. I mean, if you ever encounter regex, like this stuff is like, what the heck is that, right? Yes? It is very painful. But yay, right? Anyways. It works. It works, absolutely. And I'm not going to go over like regex in depth, but there is, if you really want to like take your awk to another level, regex is important to be at least familiar with. This right here, what it's doing is validating or verifying whether an email address is in fact an email address. That's what that's doing there. There's a set of escape characters and all that jazz. So tip, right? Tips for Macadmins, learn regex as you go. Unless you're using regex daily, it's best to use references. The awk programming languages book, the appendix, has a phenomenal reference on awk specific regex. If you use regex101.com, I would suggest the ECMA script flavor is closest to the POSIX standard that is used by awk. If you write code in JavaScript, that's what ECMA is. So the starter example, we already actually saw this. You want to put regex expressions, regular expressions, inside of the 2 forward slashes. So this macOS is actually in the 2 forward slashes is considered a regular expression. Now, a regular expression wildcard. Now we're starting to delve into the use cases that we might see out in the wild. Okay? Again, we're now asking awk to do an action, invoking the function of gsub, and we're trying to match a pattern. So anything that fits a pattern of lowercase a through z, uppercase a through z, 0 through 9, and then the dot, plus dot apple, and I'm going to replace it, okay, with Macadmins. And then I'm going to ask it to print a new log file. So here's the before, big giant cursor, and Macadmins after, right? Use cases. Reviewing awk in the wild. This is going to get a little bit deep here. So cleaning up garbage data, retrieve model identifiers for devices in a fleet. Okay? The command. We are using IOReg input output key registry -C IO platform expert device, and we're looking for all terms that match the pattern model, and we're asking awk to print that. Well, this is what comes up. If you type this in your computer, you'll see something similar. This is what I want, right here, right? That's what I want. How do I skip all these lines? How do I skip all that? And I get that right here. Without the commas, without any pipes, without the, the equal sign, angle brackets, how do we do that? You have to look into regex logic right here, right? So there's a lot going on with this command. It's a little bit advanced, but let me unpack it. So I'm invoking a command line output, a field separator, -F, -F, and I'm creating a new field separator. Oh, by the way, how awk distinguishes fields and columns is that if there is a space in between a string of characters or numbers or a tab, that's a field. Okay? In this case, we're creating a new field. We're asking awk to look at double quotes. If it finds a double quote, it's going to create a new field. Okay? And then I'm asking awk to search for model. And in that line, we're looking at the angle brackets to replace them, right? So this right here is OR. So what it's looking at is globally substituting the left angle bracket or this logical operator right here, the logical operator or the right angle bracket with an empty string. And we're asking it to this manipulation on the fourth column and to print the fourth column, and we get this out. Okay. A show of hands, how many columns do we have here? Just 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, 6. How many columns do we have? We have one column? We have 4? 1?
Before you do the quote, before you do the field separator or after?
Before the field separator, yeah,
Oh,
that's right.
okay.
Before the field separator, thank you. Technically we have 4. Important concept, because this will open your mind, right? So we have technically, the gentleman over there was correct, we have 4 columns. We have 4 fields. So columns equals fields. We have 4 fields here. We have 1 field, 2 fields, 3 fields, and 4. Okay? Now, with the field separator, that double quote, that -F, I'm asking awk to look at this as a field separator. So anything before will be considered a field. So in this case now, the number of fields changes. Okay? And you'll see why. So here we have the double quote. What's before this is 1. Double quote again, 2. Double quote again, 3. 4, the Mac 15, 12, and then 5. There's 5 fields here, okay? But this is going to disappear because I'm doing a substitution. We're doing a manipulation to the text. And that's how we're able to get this text right here. If I were to leave out the field separator, what I would get would be just this. I'm sorry, not the angle brackets. I'd get the two double quotes on each side, right? But that get us what we want. So you can do a lot of stuff with this. So JAMP extension attributes. NBM script automations. So we need to report the latest date and time of the most recent install of macOS. Let's break down how awk can accomplish this. So if I run the system underscore profiler sp install history data type, it's a mouthful, I get all of this right here. That's with no awk, no grep, no SED. I just get a bunch of stuff, right? And I just want the last time, in this case, this is a while ago, as you can see, I just want this text. And not even, I don't even want the install date, I just want this, when it was installed and the time, right? So in order to get more granular information, I'm invoking two pattern matches here. Awk, single quotes, right? So here's one single quote, here's the other. I'm invoking macOS install date. Notice the comma here. This is some comment. I'm not going to be able to go through the entire syntax, but do your due diligence. And then I'm asking it to print. Remember the action. Latest macOS version installed on. Print the third column and the fourth column, because remember, we have one column, two columns, 3 and 4. Third and fourth. And then I'm piping in a Unix command tell, which will give me this right here, what you see in bold. Yes?
How did you make it, I'm missing where it just lists the last date of the install.
The tell.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah, and the point of that is you can integrate other types of commands. You can do head, you can do sort, you could even write a sorting program with awk. I don't recommend that though. So that's, as a very dear friend of mine will say, it does not spark joy in life, right?
How did you get the PM on the end of that December field?
It's one string, 302 PM.
So there's a space.
Oh, that is true. Oh, error. It's actually, I copied it incorrectly.
You'd have to add a comma $5, right?
Come again?
You'd have to add comma $5.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Someone caught an error. No, but thank you. Thank you. And to clarify, and thank you very much, actually, that is a good point. If I were to do a dollar sign, comma, $5, I'd get PM. That's correct. I just did a copy and pasta. Okay, log sanitation. Remove user IDs, remove internal IP addresses, remove URLs. We have a client that is very pro-security, and sometimes we need to share logs with vendors, and we can't have any personal identifiers in our log that we share with our vendors. So I used awk to do this manipulation. This is an example. Here we have in red, I want to remove these fields. So I don't want the vendor to know our internal IP addresses or internal URLs. So we have one here, proxy.example. I don't want the vendor to know who's the user. Tom Thumb is the user in this case, and then this is an internal IP address, but it could be a public one that we own. You get the drift. All right, so this is the log sanitation solution script. So I'm substituting Tom Thumb for user redacted. And here what I'm doing is, this is a regular expression. I'm looking for anything that fits 0 through 9. And I'm asking awk to do this on the first and third field 3 times, okay? And then I'm asking awk again on the fourth field, because an IPv4 address has how many octets? 4 octets, right? So we're asking it to do, on the last octet, to do the same thing again. And I'm replacing it with IP redacted. Same thing with proxy.example, URL redacted. So I take the standard input file, in this case it's file.log, and I'm outputting a new file, new_file log, and this is the end result. right? Because, going through this manually is very painful, and I'm pretty sure you guys are smart enough that you don't want to do that manually, right? Another tidbit I wanted to add here. So why awk, right? You could use Python. There's a lot of programming languages out there, but if there are certain use cases and certain clients that we've encountered that don't have advanced programming languages already pre-installed into the system. And so in this case, you have to use the tools that you have. Awk can do this kind of stuff. And awk, by the way, comes natively installed in macOS and in many other distributions, Linux, Unix, you name it. So data transformation, you may or may not run into this kind of use case. This is a CSV file that I have here, and I want to convert it to JSON. This is the script. I'm not going to go much too in-depth into it, but there are some comments here that explain what is happening, and this is the desired output. Now, I don't ever run across an instance where I need to do this, frankly. This is just more of an example of what you can do with awk. So am I done talking yet? Wow. I'm like, we got 40 minutes left. Okay. So to think of awk as an effective line reader and parser. Memorizing a few lines of awk can make you more efficient in scripting, if you can learn regex well. Not only useful for awk, but for many other programming languages as well. Before you go, useful awk one-liners, and the one-liners in action. So here we have, I'm printing the number of records in this file. It tells me that there's 4 records, there's 4 lines. Print $NF. Oops. Printing out the number of fields that have digits in it. This right here is what we saw a little earlier. Oh, forgive me, guys. There we go. Oh, no. There we go. And this right here, the last line of awk, it's printing out the number of the fields that are greater than 0. So if you notice here, I have 1 empty line. And here is just printing everything that's not empty, in other words. Okay? Well, thank you. A lot sooner than I expected. I want to take a moment before we start the questions and answers to thank my team at Tamin, Sloan, Steve. You guys are phenomenal. Tobias, I appreciate a lot of the support you've given me, and many others. Phenomenal guys. Yeah, so we have a lot of time for Q&A, so if you have any questions, please do. Yes, the gentleman over there. Can you pass the cube?
Which gentleman?
All right, so this was when I got to thinking, because you mentioned grep and awk. What would you say is, like, when's the right time to use like just a string investigation in awk versus like stringing a grep into it?
Awk is more verbose, right? I've always wanted to do this, guys.
Ooh, the board's coming out. The board's coming out.
So you'd have input file, right? And then you'd have pipe, and then you're searching for house. You do grep. House. That's less verbose than doing awk's way of awk. Single quote, this, house, I mean, it's just same thing, right? It does the same exact thing, but in that case, just use grep. You know, and the talk tomorrow, I'm pretty sure it's going to go over like all these little nitpicky details about grep and awk and SED.
Cool. Thanks.
Good question. Any other questions? Oh, yes. So, yes.
What was the book that you recommended?
Literally, it could be the awk Bible. It's the awk programming language book. And I just scratched the surface on what awk does. In this book, I mean, there are things, you can do a lot of stuff with it.
What's the,
What's the craziest or silliest thing you've seen output with awk? Or, like, can you run Doom in awk?
Yes, I'm pretty sure you can.
I mean, if it's a Turing complete
If it's
language.
a Turing complete language, yeah, you can run. I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean, if you really want to computer science 101, right? You're going to do a recursive function. Try it with awk, right? You can do it. Don't put me up to the board with that. I mean, I'd fail miserably right now. But yeah, you can do a lot of things with it. If you want to write some sophisticated things with it, by all means. But remember that each programming language has its tool sets, right? And awk is specific for text pattern matching and manipulation. I mean, you can do other things with it, but it's just not convenient. You know, for that, just go with Python or with, another programming language, Ruby, whatnot, right? Good question. Yes, sir.
Hey, there we go. Since this is a standalone command that gets executed when you're running it, we shouldn't expect to see any behavioral differences whether this is invoked in Bash or Z shell? Just should behave the same, syntax
They
same?
should behave the same, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I would need, actually, after the talk, let's verify that. That's a really good question. I never really come up with it. I run Z shell and I also run Bash. Haven't had an instance of it acting a little wonky or not, so. Yeah. Yeah. What that guy said. Thank you, by the way. Yes.
Oh, this seems dangerous.
Thanks. Good throw. So all the examples here, and I guess every time I've ever messed with awk, I've always done it on a command line, and that's just been at the one line.
Yeah.
If it's a programming language, though, usually I think of a programming language, even an interpreted one, as having some sort of editor. Do people make longer awk programs?
They do.
that-
They do, yes.
How do they do that? Do they store it as like a script?
Yes, it's stored as a .awk file.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is, I said that in the use cases you're going to encounter out in the wild, it's going to be 1 or 2 statements. There are some people who really just, really want to test themselves, and they just write awk programs, and you can save it as a .awk file. Now, the editor, you can use an editor of choice that makes you, makes you happy. That sparks joy in your life, right?
Right.
So, good question. Any other questions? Anything else? Yes, sir?
I don't think you covered this, but why is it called awk?
Awk?
A-W-K, yeah, why is it awk? Oh, did I miss that? My bad. Never mind.
It's because of these 3 gentlemen. Yeah, third slide, yeah. So it's the first initials of the last names of the creators. These guys, I mean, please look up these guys if you're not familiar with who they are. I mean, most people should be. Phenomenal minds in the world of computer science. Lots of great things were created out of the Bell Labs laboratory. In fact, the C programming language itself was created at Bell Labs. awk is influenced by the C programming language as well. Anything else, guys? Yes, sir? And you know it's performant because it's not loading to memory. I'm kidding. I don't know. All right, guys. If there is anything else, yes, sir.
At what point do you find yourself stepping in something else, instead of using aux? So stepping in PowerShell, stepping in Bash, something like that.
If it's not going to be 1 or 2 lines, I typically just go with something else. There are better options than awk. Python, Perl, right? Perl, although like it's some people don't like it because it's just they can't understand it, right? Like it's the way that it's ran is a little wonky, and I don't really use Perl much. Maybe once or twice in my career, but this is for instances where you don't have another use case, you don't have another option. Learning this is actually great for any Unix system you're going to SSH into or use on a daily basis, if you need to, right? It's there. In and of itself is great. Good question. Anything else? All right, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for attending my talk. I really appreciate your attendance. Like almost all my meetings, they end early.